Welcome to Paris Good Food and Wine. I'm Paige Donner, the host and producer. This food and wine show is being brought to you directly from Paris, France. Here, we give you a taste of this delicious world with all its colorful and diverse personalities that make up the Paris culinary landscape. So, sit back and relax and enjoy Paris Good Food and Wine. This show, episode 21 of Paris Good Food and Wine, is dedicated to Vendange Solidaire. Vendange Solidaire is an initiative to help support the difficulties endured by winemakers due to severe climatic conditions suffered in several regions here in France this past year.
When you hear passionate winemakers, telling the story, it's very saddening. I mean, it's obviously saddening, but it's more than an economical loss. It's really a hit in their heart, I would say.
We'll speak to Ludovic Dardenne, co-founder of this initiative and co-owner of several of Paris's top wine bars and wine-centric restaurants, including Glou, Jaja, and Le Grand Coeur, which are all located in the Marais. Following that, we'll hear from Brigitte Oudeline, the director of the Burgundy Wine School, as she fills us in on her process of designing courses at the Beaune-based wine school. Wine classes there are for wine trade professionals as well as open to the general public under certain circumstances. To add more insight into the Ecole de Vin de Bourgogne, I also speak with Nicolas Tecard, who's an instructor at the Burgundy Wine School. The course he presented during the summer focused on wine and food pairings, and this is what he talks more about during our interview. So, sit back and relax and get ready for another tasty half hour of Paris Good Food and Wine with me, Paige Donner, your host and producer. Paris Good Food and Wine is brought to you by Paris Food and Wine. Download the travel app in the App Store and on Google Play today. Paris Food and Wine travel app offers you exclusive tips, deals, and daily specials on all the best restaurants, hotels, bars, and excursions in Paris. Download the app today. Sitting here in the Marais, in the Haute Marais, right within the view of the Picasso Museum at Glou, which is one of Paris's most beloved wine bars. And we've got Ludovic Dardenne, who is co-owner with Julien Fouin, here to speak to us first about this wine bar and a couple of his other wine bars, and then also about the very timely and pressing issue of supporting winemakers in this difficult year. And that's through an initiative he and his partners started called Vendange Solidaire. So I guess first things first, let's just hear, what was the concept behind Glou when you opened this in 2008?
Well, the concept was to create a bistro, a bistro restaurant with my partner Julien Fouin. We had both a passion for products, raw products, I would say, and we part of these products we were passionate about was the wine. Not the raw product, a bit of transformation between the grapes and wine, but definitely a passion. And we wanted, the idea on the wine side was to make it accessible. We wanted to have a wide number of references that could be accessible by the glass. So we had invested in these lovely machines that you might have seen downstairs that help us to preserve the wine for 2 to 3 weeks, and that enable us to pour wine by the glass, and very good wines like Burgundy wines, etc., etc. And the wine was very much at the heart of the experience here, always been, and particularly winemakers from which we can call adventurers. So not necessarily in the big French regions, the most famous ones. I was talking about Burgundy. It's a big one. It's a famous one of the most famous. But we wanted to welcome some alternative winemakers. That was 8 years ago, and in Paris, you didn't have so many restaurants, bistro with such an original or different proposition. And we wanted to present the wine as an experience, not only as a region. So the way we had classified the wines was quite unusual, because it was more related to a mood or to an envy, to a situation, to what kind of dinner do you want to have, what kind of lunch are you going to experience. So that was all these aspects which made the glue very, as you say, much beloved from the beginning.
That's fascinating. And, I should point out, too, that the way I'm saying the name of your bistro and restaurant and wine bar is Glou, which sounds in English like glue, but it's actually Glou, which in French means like gulp or something like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's, we say glou, 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 to refer to that's a lovely sound that we make when we drink wine, basically.
So a very innovative approach that you started in 2008, and of course now we know eight years later this is very successful. Your other wine bar, Bistro Jaja, just also in the Marais, is also very successful. And I think you guys have been sort of the inspiration for almost a mushrooming of these kinds of cool bistro wine bars in the Marais. Now, over the years, you must have forged some really great relationships with some of these winemakers. Like you said, they're not necessarily big commercial winemakers, but just people who are very passionate about making wine.
Exactly. Passionate, very young for some of them. So, as I was saying, adventurers who take risks, and that's what it's all about. I mean, that's what makes to us the French wine so different. It's the expression of a year. It's of a terroir, of course, of a winemaker himself, of the experiments he or she can make, and we fell in love with, if I may say, with some of them, and with their all the risks they've taken, and that's something we have always been very supportive of, because we quite rapidly, by getting to know them, by going to see them and see how they work and what's the reality of their work, we discovered how many risks some of them were taking, and that is what we call vin nature, and all these people who are doing everything they can not to put any bad ingredients, I would say, if I may say, in their wine, and we got to develop a strong relationship with some of them, really.
And I guess so that leads us to our next, the next question here for you. And I, really the purpose of this interview today with you. Now, I wanted to allude back to that Guardian article that recently published towards the end of October, saying that wine production in France is down about 12% this year. Now, Europe, Italy, Spain, France has not been hit as hard as Chile and Argentina. Nonetheless, a 12% reduction in production is significant. And I think it's, having spoken to some of the winemakers during the harvest season and since, a lot of people are feeling it. Certain regions more than others here in France. But now you and your partners started an initiative this year called Vendange Solidaire. And so vendange means harvest and solidaire means kind of like solidarity. Yeah. So explain to us, please, this initiative and how it supports the winemakers.
Yeah, indeed, 12% drop, and that's on average. So that means some region it's a catastrophe. It's sometimes 50 up to 80% drop. It's for some winemakers, it's a year of work that will never be rewarded, and for some of them it's been 2 years in a row. So it was not more than a catastrophe. It was almost the end of their dream. So we thought, what could we do? I mean, it was because we order wine to them, and when they told us that it was not going to happen, we were like sad. And instead of going to seek elsewhere some wine, we decided to do something for them, with them. And of course, you might, quite stupidly, we thought at first, well, we're going to buy some more wines to them, but they don't have any, and they won't have. So we thought, well, that's something we need to do that has to go beyond their very own problem. And we decided to create this initiative to invite everybody in the wine industry, working closely like their fellow winemakers themselves, or the agents, or even, of course, the restaurant, the customers, everybody who love the wines to participate to this national effort. And we had a tremendous echo that's within the French, the Parisian restaurants, and now even in the other cities in France, and that's fantastic for them. So it's now a big movement, and we want to make it even bigger, and then to make sure that it's that's very important. The money we collect is fairly redistributed to the winemakers that really needs it to survive.
Sure. And, I guess numbers that you mentioned to me, right before we rolled here, were that there are 200 restaurants now across France who are participating. So there's a good couple of dozen, 2 or 3 dozen here in Paris alone. And then I guess as far as Lyon and maybe Toulouse and perhaps Bordeaux and...
Yeah, I have to confess, I haven't checked before coming to meet you, but yeah, it's between 150 and 200 now, and we're very happy about it. We didn't expect such an enthusiasm, and it's a very good sign. I mean, people care.
People do care. People do care about the winemakers, and it's wonderful to see. Now, I know that as we're interviewing today, the restaurant part of it, where, you go to a restaurant and when you order a bottle of wine, some of the proceeds actually go directly to the winemaker. That, several week long initiative is coming to an end, but not the campaign. The campaign still lives on. So if people want to support you and well, not support you, but support the winemakers that, you've become, that you've actually created this for, how can they do that?
Indeed. Thanks for mentioning this. We have now a website and the Facebook page on which you can make un don. Sorry. Forgive my French. A donation. So yeah, the Facebook page is Vendange Solidaire, and the website is vendangesolidaire.com. So we're gonna carry on and turn this into something bigger that can useful for the year to come, because we're concerned that these are not the only years where the winemaker's gonna have this kind of situation to cope with. So yeah, it's all open to any donation, and we hope that this initiative will carry on over the years until it's useless, because everything's back to normal and we're fine.
Well, no, as you're saying, this might not just be an isolated case. And, again, that Guardian interview and the Guardian article, and there have been articles over the years. I did an article for the New York Times in 2011 saying that, these climactic issues are a result of climate change. Now, whether you subscribe to that theory or not, the reality is that the cold, hard reality is the fact that a lot of winemakers are suffering. I mean, if you spend even just a little bit of time in Burgundy, not to mention some of the other regions, you see these large numbers, 40% of a harvest lost in an overnight gel, frost or a hailstorm. And I mean, that's just got to be devastating for these people who've worked all year long, and 40% of their crops are just done in one night.
Yeah, that's when you hear passionate winemakers, telling the story. It's very saddening. I mean, it's obviously saddening, but it's more than an economical loss. It's really it's really a hit in their heart, I would say, because they spend their days, weeks, and months trying to grow the best grape they can, and they cannot take any joy out of it after one night of major rains or frost or so. It's really terrible. It has always happened, of course. We know that it's part of the game. Some of them might say. Now, when it's been several years in a row, in some case there's a problem. We know it's probably related to global warming, or let's say climate change. We know that it's going to happen more and more, and there's probably something to be done, and that's what we try to do to help them prevent from dying in the near future for them.
No, it's a wonderful initiative, and it's so great that you and your partner Julien and Julien's wife Lori, that you guys kind of came up with this, and as she mentioned to me, it just sort of took on its own life and snowballed
very rapidly. It's Julien actually who had the idea over a weekend. He sent me an email, and on Monday we were trying to accelerate, to create the association and the website, and call the agents. We had Romuald Caron and lots of agents here who participated, and mostly the agents who are working with winemakers from the Loire Valley or from Burgundy or from Pic Saint-Loup, who have very much hit this year. And it was, again, it's a team effort, and we have so many restaurants now in Paris, and they all deserve credit for participating to this adventure, and that we had some very heartful messages from the winemakers. They were so happy that we would do this. It was, aside the money thing, the money aspect, they were happy that to realize that so many people were caring about the situation and wanted to help.
So listen, anybody listening to the podcast, show some love. Show some love to your winemakers, and I'm going to post the website on the underneath the podcast, so you can easily find it. And there's a Facebook page as well, Vendange Solidaire. I want to thank you so much, Ludovic, for taking the time to talk to us about this.
Thank you, Paige. Really, that's great to shed some light.
Yeah, no, it's light that definitely deserves to be shed. And again, this location here in the Marais at Glou is an absolutely fantastic location, and everybody needs to come and check this one out, and Jaja too, and Le Grand Coeur as well. Thank you.
Merci.
I'm Paige Donner, host and producer of Paris, Good Food and Wine. The famous Vente de Vin, or the Burgundy Wine Auction that benefits the regional hospital, the Hospice de Beaune, takes place the third week in November. This year, the date falls on November 20th. According to Ludovine Griveau, the enologist for the vast holdings of the Hospice de Beaune's Burgundy vineyards, you can expect this year's vintage to be concentrated, silky, and supple. It's a vintage that's comfortable in its skin, says the expert, who confessed to watching the weather conditions on her smartphone apps on an hourly basis at certain times throughout the year, just to keep on top of the constant climate fluctuations that had some vineyard owners on edge. For the 156th Burgundy Wine Auction in Beaune, bidders can expect to bid on 596 pièces, or barrels. This year, the pièce de président, the prestige barrel, whose sale always benefits the chosen charity of the year, is a unique wine blend in the world. It's called the Corton-Bresson Grand Cru Hospice de Beaune 2016. And the auction proceeds will benefit the Fondation Arc for curing cancer and the Fondation Cure et Recherche for cardiovascular disease. At last year's auction, the pièce de président, sold for 480,000 euros. It was a record and more than double the previous year's record sale. So, with our calendars clearly marked for November 20th wine auction festivities in Bonn, we turn our attention now to the Ecole de Vin de Bourgogne, or the wine school. Namely, the director of the Burgundy Wine School, Brigitte Oudelin, who we'll hear from next. Okay, so Brigitte Oudelin, you're the director of this gorgeous wine school here in Burgundy, in Bonn, actually, like the wine capital of Burgundy. And you are very instrumental in actually implementing these wine courses. Now, the one that just finished was, an extremely focused and very, I think, very strategic atelier because it focused on the wine and food pairings. Can you tell us a little bit about your process in terms of organizing it and putting it together and what the goal of it is?
Sure. The Bourgogne Wine Board and the Bourgogne Wine School have talked to many professionals and found out that what was the most interesting for wine shop owners, people who are working in restaurant, in hotel, they wanted to talk about the wine through the wine and food pairing. So that's why we set up the Bourgogne Wine Board and with us along set up this atelier on 2 days. We wanted to work. The aim was to give some keys to the participants on the wine and food pairing. So the first idea was on the different aromas family that we can find in the wine, and then to talk about the vintage, which is very important in Bourgogne, as you know, as we have only a single grape variety. Each year brings its own personality to each wine, so it was very important to talk about that. And then on the second day is to be able to taste wine and food together. So we thought about as well bringing people on the first day, of course, in the vineyards, because as long as it's fine to talk about those fine food and wine pairing when you are in New York or in England or wherever, but whenever you are here in Bourgogne, the most important thing is to walk in the vineyard and see with your eyes yourself.
I'm so glad that you're touching on that point because, we all arrived, 25 strangers arrived. We, nobody, knew each other, although everyone was a professional, like you're saying, a professional wine shop owner or a couple of journalists, but mainly like wine shop owners, sommeliers, people, really in the wine industry. So we had a whole morning of learning theoreticals, like looking up at a chalkboard with illuminated PowerPoints. And like you said, that can be in New York or that can be in London. But the big difference was in the afternoon, you guys took us all out and we actually walked through those vineyards and you showed us the cray, right?
Yeah, the landscape and analysis is very important each time in an atelier. We really want people to be on spot and realize by themselves the difference of the landscape and the difference of the climat, which we talk afterwards or beforehand in our wine when we do tastings. It's important as well to meet people and professional. That's why on the second day after the food and wine pairing, you were invited to go and meet. This time it was the Bichot's house, because theory is good, but you can do it everywhere. And when you are in Bourgogne, you have to be able to feel it by yourself. And I think all the five senses are awakened.
So as the director of this school, this was, I can't imagine a better atelier than a food and wine pairing atelier focused on Burgundy wines. I mean, that's just to me like the pinnacle. But as the director of this school, you do these throughout the year, correct? And so how do you choose the topics and what's the process, that you put into actually organizing and fine-tuning what people can learn about?
We have different ateliers. When we focus on professional, as we say here, wine shop owner and journalist, we work with and for the Bourgogne Wine Board. So people are invited to come over, and they realized study and asked people which topic they really wanted to hear about. So that's why the climat came out, which is very important in Burgundy, in Bourgogne. And the first topic that came out in that study was the food and wine pairing. That's why we focused on it. Then we do work together on with sommelier, with some wine expert, with a restaurant to try to find the good match, but also to try to experience something. What we really lacked today, what I lack today, is that everybody could give their own view on the matching, on the food and wine matching. And the first one, for instance, when we organized that day, we wanted to surprise people straight away. So we chose to put with a foie gras red wine. Usually people will go with a foie gras with sweet white wine, which we have as well. People might not know it, but we have some sweet white wine in south of Bourgogne. It can match with some dry white wine, but we wanted to surprise people, to awake people straight away in the morning, and that's why we chose and try to find the proper match with the red wine. That's how we worked. Then we tried to find some food that everybody could understand. So the salmon, a lot of people around in France, but also foreign people eat salmon. So that's why we wanted to have that dish and try to find, of course, a wine from Chablis, but also from the south of Bourgogne, match very well with salmon, I think. Then we wanted to show the importance of the base, the first ingredient, but to show that depending on the sauce, depending on the ingredients, if there was a bit more pepper or salt or some more oil on some of the dish or some cream, then the match with the wine would be different. So we all test that. We had different tasting, and then we organize it together.
Yeah, a lot of that, everything that you just said was, people had so many things to say about it too, so many viewpoints. That little bit of pepper on the foie gras threw off what would have been maybe a very typical taste, typical pairing with a sweet wine. And like you said, the sweet wine, I never knew that there was a sweet wine from Burgundy, so that was a big illumination. Now, you chose some things, you challenged people, and it sounds like that's really what you're intending to do, is challenge people, not just get people to think and talk about Burgundy wines, but challenge them to take it even a little bit further.
Exactly. What we really like is not to give, it's not a dictionary. If there is one thing that people can retain about Bourgogne, is that the diversity of the wine and the diversity of people making wine give a full offer on wine for the food and wine pairing, but not only. And we want people just to open their mind, as you said, challenging people. And if there's one thing that people can retain after those ateliers is, okay, I can learn more, I can think a bit more, maybe I can try something different. That's it. And in Bourgogne, we have a big diversity that give a good challenge to try and try and try again and to come back.
Well, that's a wonderful note to thank you very profoundly. Paris Good Food and Wine is brought to you by Paris Food and Wine. Download the travel app in the App Store and on Google Play today. Paris Food and Wine travel app offers you exclusive tips, deals, and daily specials on all the best restaurants, hotels, bars, and excursions in Paris. Download the app today. Next, we have Nicolas Tecard on the program, who, in addition to being an instructor for the Burgundy Wine School, also has his own wine tour business called Wine Dream Concept. Nicola, you just wrapped up a wonderful 2-day atelier here in Burgundy, and it was both focusing on the wines and also the wine pairings, which was a wonderful focus. First of all, tell me your whole name, and tell me what is it that you do here in Burgundy? What's your specialization in terms of wine?
So first, thank you for coming to see us. I'm Nicolas Taccard. I'm a wine instructor at the School of Wine. I've got a sommelier background, and today I'm teaching at the School of Wine and at the university. I'm selling as well wine to restaurants with my private company. We just spent 2 days focusing on food and wine matching. Very interesting days. We had very great groups because I think it's very important to have a good interaction with the student to be able to speak and to make them understand what we want to do. First day, we start just to focus on terroir, geology, to try to put the base on the food and wine matching by classify the different wine families that we found in Burgundy with 8 different wine families, 4 in white, 4 in red.
In fact, I love that you're jumping right into the program, which is exact. You anticipated my question. That's what I was going to ask. I was going to say, so we had these last 2 days, a full 2 days. So, and it was very structured programming. It's not like, here you guys go, here's a bunch of wines, go taste them on your own. No, this was a really structured class. So, we started with the geology, but that first morning at 9:15 a.m., what was the first class that you presented?
The first class, so we represent first thing the program to see because I think to do food and wine matching is good to introducing the wine and everything and what are the base of Burgundy, what are the base of food and wine matching, just to be able on the second day to really understand and focus on the food and wine matching. At 9:50 we just met, nicely, we introduced all ourselves just to feel everyone comfortable during the tasting and during those 2 days, to be able just to feel relaxed. It's something we want to teach, but in a way we want to teach in a good way to make sure that everyone can understand it and can come back in his home, in his area, with a good way and a good understanding of Burgundy wine. So we start with the terroir, geology, just to give a base, and after we classified those family with the red and the white. We taste those family. We try to taste because it's always difficult. I'm sure you remember. It's always difficult to have the right family on the right spot with the right wine. And after we had a great lunch, Burgundian lunch, traditional. I think it was quite okay, if you remember. I think I enjoyed it.
That lunch at Cheval Noir was just, there was that table set for there was about 25 or 30 of us, some members of the BIVB, and then the rest of us students, a lot of French, a couple of foreigners. And what I really appreciated too, and I mentioned to a friend of mine, was that you didn't just let us, pour, the wines just weren't poured with lunch. You got up and explained each wine pairing with each of the meal courses, the entree, the main course.
Exactly, because it's a way we set up the base in the morning, but I think it's too. If we just give the wine and just help yourself, and sometimes you feel that you don't know where to go, you don't know what to look, and it's true that we looked after the food and wine matching with the wine you taste, and during this lunch, and it was, for me, it's very important for you to feel comfortable with that, and I think it's part of our, I would say, the Burgundian experience. I mean, to be close as possible from you, and to explain you those different food and wine matching, and I think it helps as well if there is something that you cannot. Something you don't pick, or it's possible, and the idea is to exchange as well, always exchange. You can be agree or not agree, and the idea is to talk about it, and to talk about the wine of Burgundy, was it good or not, but I think we did quite okay on those matching. I was very pleased because we settled them on the paper, so it's always difficult without tasting, but after you realize that it was quite a good match, and I think everyone enjoyed it, and so
I think I agree. Everyone did really enjoy it. And I appreciated, too, that you as an instructor, you were open to the feedback from the students. So it's not like you didn't get up in front of us and say, okay, this is the notes that you have to find in this wine. It was really much more interactive than that. It was like, what do you find? Personally, what do you find in this wine? And do you find that it pairs well with our choices?
It's an idea. I always, for me, wine is open to everyone. I think it should not be one person who talk for the other one. Everyone should have his own aspect, his own think about the wine, and his own thought about the wine. And I think it's very important. Everyone should be able to talk about it. I'm not the one which is always right. It's not the way we want to show it to our student. I'm here to talk. As I say, I'm the big mouth of the day, but you have your word to say. And because you've got an opinion, and it's very important to give your opinion, even for us, because sometimes we can make a mistake. And so that for me is a very, very important point, that you can be able to speak and to tell your opinion, actually. Yeah. So that...
And then it was a wonderful wrap-up because so the 2 days of classes and tastings and pairings with wines and food pairings. And then we just now wrapped up with a visit at the Albert Bichot cellars, which was a wonderful tasting of both the selection of the reds and the whites. So can you just elaborate a little bit on what that was like?
I think it's always a nice way to finish by a wine tasting at the estate, to meet the winemaker, to meet the person in charge there, and to show how it works. Each winery, we taste a few vintage, but mainly 2013 vintage. And what it is interesting is you got one vintage, one winemaker, wine from all Burgundy, and you can realize that through those 4 white, 4 red, and 5 red, that you got different taste according if you are in Chablis, in Mâcon, in Côte de Nuit, in Côte de Beaune. All the white and all the red have different tastes. They've got their own identity, and that is very important. And I think that really shows what Burgundy is about. It's about a place with one grapes and one taste, and that's what we love. That's what we classified at the UNESCO program, and I think it's a good way to finish this day with the food matching this morning. Was, I think, quite interesting to see the different classification of wine, and so yes, I think it's a good day to finish.
Yeah, no, it really was. And I have to just on that last note, I have to say too, there's such a welcoming feel here in Burgundy to all people, to foreigners too. You don't feel like you have to speak. It's nice when you do speak some French, but you don't feel like you're a fish out of water when you're a foreigner here, and I really appreciate that. And I know too that you have a wine touring company, I think. Do you want to just mention that company?
Yeah, well, the name of my company is Wine Dream Concept. I'm working with the School of Wine on this program, just to organize tour in Burgundy, to bring also. We don't do like sitting courses for that. We're going straight in the vineyard like we did on the first day in the afternoon. We go to the vineyard, we just explain everything, so the weather has to be with us, so it's a very important fact. And after we go straight to the estate, just to have like a real feeling of the people inside Burgundy. So you are in the vineyard, we show you we try to show you the best spot of Burgundy, the famous one like we talked all during those 2 days, Romanée-Conti, Corton Charlemagne, Montrachet is a very important spot, and why they are there. With the history, and after we finish, as we say, with a few tasting, but with like always a meaning to the tasting. So maybe the first tasting will be about the plot, the second will be about the vintage, and after with maybe an organic one to finish, just to every time to give a sense to the visit. So that's what we try to do, and I hope we do well for that.
It was fabulous. Thank you so much, Nicolas. Thank you.
It has been a great pleasure to welcome you, and don't hesitate to come back.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Paris Good Food and Wine. A big thank you to all who helped make this show possible, and especially a grand merci beaucoup from me, your host and producer, Paige Donner. You can find this and past episodes of Paris Good Food and Wine on iTunes. And remember to follow us on Twitter at Paris Food Wine, and like us on Facebook at Paris Food and Wine.